First, thank you everyone for joining today. I'm really excited to have Sandra on to talk about going zero waste at home, personal passion of mine. There's always a lot more to learn, a lot more to do. So she is an authority, certainly, on the subject. We're going to try to keep this very casual. It's, summertime now officially, right? So just please put your questions into the Q&A as we're going, and I'll try to just fit them into our conversation, but we will set some time aside at the end for everyone to ask their questions. Try to think of your hardest sustainability challenges. See if you can stump the expert, because I don't know if you'll be able to, but it's worth a shot. Just one bit of legal before we get started here. We're going to talk about some companies today, particularly Sandra's, because they do some very interesting work to solve some of our waste issues. And I am a big fan, so just want to make sure we all know no investment advice here. You can see the disclosure on the screen. So now that that's out of the way, I would love to introduce our panelist, Sandra Noonan. She is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Just Salad. It's a fast casual salad chain where they have really mastered the art of the reusable salad bowl. I've bought reusable salad bowls at other chains before and then been refused the ability to reuse them because then they cite the health code after you've bought it and used it once. So it's something that I am personally very invested in, and they managed to do it in a new way and solve all the problems. So but Sandra, when she's not being the CSO, also started the zero waste chapter of in New York City, and has gone on her own personal journey to get to zero waste. And yeah, Sandra, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add,
No,
but we're
it's
so
great.
grateful to have you here today. Yeah.
Thanks, Corey. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'm just going to jump right into it then. So first maybe, and actually while I'm going to ask you a few introductory questions, and while I do that, I'm going to ask our attendees if they'll just going to pull the audience a bit. First, just let us know where you're calling in from. Are you in the US? What part of the US? East, west, southwest, southeast, Midwest? Anyone outside the US? The recycling regimes vary greatly. And then the next question coming to you is what is your biggest sustainability challenge that you're concerned about? But all right, great participation, folks. Thank you so much. Love to see high voting participation. All right, I'm going to close this poll now. Thank you to everyone who voted. Mostly East Coast, no surprise there. Almost a quarter from the Midwest, though. All right, and then about 15% from the West Coast and Southwest, and a few others, Southeast and outside the U.S. I see you. Thank you for joining. Then the next poll I'm going to launch is on what is your biggest concern and your personal lifestyle about sustainability, just to help us guide the conversation a bit today. We've got a lot we could cover. We could do, I see plastics coming in strong already. Yeah, and while we're doing this, I just want to thank everyone for the really strong response we got. Everyone from the WISE network, I was so excited to get all your answers and hear your excitement about this panel. And if my cousin Yvonne is on, we've got a Regenerative Agriculture webinar coming up next for you. We're going to figure it out. Lots to do there. Yeah, I'm a new homeowner, and so trying to figure out how to use our tiny little yard to capture some carbon and host some pollinators. All right, I'm going to give you another 2 seconds here, but wow. All right, I'll share these back with you guys. Let me see, share results. You guys should be able to see plastics is the clear winner. Yeah, 65%, followed by carbon and food waste. Wonderful. All right, well, thank you guys for voting. Now I will get to the questions. So Sandra, first just tell me a little bit about how you came to the zero waste thing and where this has kind of taken you.
Sure. So a few years ago, I'm standing in my kitchen, and at my house, we use a filter, water filter. And it's one of those plastic jugs. They have the carbon, the charcoal, charcoal center in the middle. And when it gets old, you take it out and you toss it. And for some reason at that moment, I was about to get rid of the filter. We had to put in a new one. And I thought, wait a second, I can't recycle this, right? Like this isn't going to get recycled in my municipal recycling. So I have to landfill this. And how many filters have I used during my life? And I started just going down this mental rabbit hole and realizing, wait a second, a lot of things in my day-to-day are not recycled. And wait, is that recyclable? And I started looking at everything I was throwing away and realizing how little of it is actually recycled and how much of it is put in a landfill. So it was that, just having that realization on my own, coupled with this crisis of ocean plastic pollution. As a lover of the ocean, I read a New Yorker article that same year about Boyan Slot. He is a young man, Dutch man, who started a project to clean up the ocean and rid it of plastic. 5 trillion pieces of plastic are estimated to be in the ocean. By 2050, the amount of plastic in the ocean by weight will exceed that of fish, according to research. And here's the thing, I didn't think I was responsible for that. But then I started researching and realized that a lot of Americans' waste is exported abroad. Our plastics are exported abroad. And from there, countries that don't have, and they reach countries that don't have the infrastructure to handle that plastic. That plastic then finds its way to the ocean. So I could no longer absolve myself of responsibility for these environmental crises.
But so tell me though, I think you have there's a whole YouTube video, right, about how you went on this journey, and you got your monthly waste down to what? What's the smallest waste footprint you've had in a month?
Well, when we talk about zero waste, there are individuals out there who have a year's worth of their waste in a mason jar. I'm not one of those people yet. Maybe I'm close, but I still struggle with certain things that we can talk about. But I have to say, not to skip too much to the topics, but when you start composting, your landfill waste goes down dramatically. So I can't answer your question directly, Corey, but on any given day, I might just have a couple items in the landfill bin, maybe a tissue, right? So I've made a lot of progress, but it is a long journey, and you have to be kind to yourself because there are a lot of rabbit holes you can go down.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And so I love the way you frame this for us. But before we get to the personal goals, tell us about your job.
Okay. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer at Just Salad, a restaurant chain operating across 6 US states. The reason I love the Just Salad concept, besides really good salads, is our reusable bowl program. So when I started living zero waste, I'm a New Yorker. So I eat a lot on the go. I work a demanding job, and I was at the time in another company. But anyway, I wanted to eat zero waste. How do you do that when you're going to your local lunch spot and you have 10 minutes, to get back to your desk? I found Just Salad's reusable bowl program, which, because you buy a bowl for $1, you bring it back, and with every use you get a free topping. So this was the one company I found that was solving my problem, which was eating on the go in a reusable container safely and effectively. And I would go to other places and say, could you fill my container? And some would, some wouldn't, but Just Salad has it down, very systematic. So it's a great company.
Yeah, I met Sandra because of her zero waste work. And then I found out she worked at Just Salad, and I'm like a super fan. There happens to be one next to our office. And similar. I had the same problem, and Just Salad solved it. And it was, we appreciate a company that doesn't stop at the first hurdle to the sustainability challenge. You just figure out how to deal with it, and you did. So grateful for that. So we already have questions coming in. But I think this is our first our framing is going to help us with this, because the question we had is, what's the three best changes for the biggest impact? And questions about COVID. Oh yeah, we're going to get to all of this. Okay, but so let's just say it's overwhelming. So how do we start? How do we even start thinking about this? Is it just to-go containers, or like you said, there's composting, there's a million different rabbit holes. How do we start thinking about our own impact?
Yeah, okay, I've got some tips here. So the first is to think in a hierarchy. So when you are thinking about your daily life through the prism of waste, think in terms of the waste hierarchy. 1, refuse, not reduce, refuse is number 1. Reduce, reuse, compost, recycle. So again, refuse, reduce, reuse, compost, recycle. Very quickly, refuse is at the top of this mental hierarchy you're going to have, because when you start realizing how many freebies come into your life, whether you're at a hotel, whether you're at a conference for work back in the day, whether you're at a shop and they want to give you a perfume sample, whether I could go on, right? Once you start refusing freebies and items from other people, you're going to be really surprised by how much you're keeping out of your household. So the others are more self-explanatory, but I really want to emphasize refuse. I was on a plane yesterday. They wanted to give me a snack pack and I refused, and they seemed so confused, right? So it's very countercultural to say, no, I don't need that. And that's a big part of zero waste living, refusing the freebies. The other tip I would give is focus on one area of your life at a time to make this manageable. And we can go into all those domains, but you might want to focus on clothing, cosmetics, travel, food, home decor. In every area of living, there is a path to zero waste. So you got to pick what is interesting to you and feasible to you.
Yeah, definitely, especially with kids. I feel like the kids introduce a whole new genre of waste. I'll call it waste.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe, and I see questions about, COVID and takeout and recycling. And don't worry, Hannah, we're going to talk about recycling. I hope my mom is listening, because that's going to be just fully dedicated to my mother and the practice of wish cycling. But first, okay, let's name some of the domains. Let's be organized. Let's go through some of the domains. You said travel. That seems like a big one. Flying, cars, what kind of transportation you pick. Where do we start with travel?
Yeah, so let's assume you're going on a plane or a car. First thing I think about when I'm packing for a trip is where are my snacks? I don't want to purchase any packaged snacks. I don't want to purchase those plastic wrapper snacks. None of that stuff is recyclable curbside in a blue bin. So I will always get for me, it's some sort of peanuts or walnuts or what have you, and put them in a little reusable container. And those go in my suitcase and my bag. I also bring my own utensils. So I'm not using plastic utensils, and I bring a reusable coffee cup and a reusable water cup. When you're at the hotel, again, for me, it's refusing freebies. So what does that mean? You get into the hotel room, there's slippers packaged in plastic. No, thank you. Those will stay unwrapped and unused. I'll use my own shoes or socks, whatever. And it also extends to the freebies in the bathroom. So cotton swabs, cotton balls, everything. I have my reusable versions of that, or my compostable version of that for cotton swabs. So really just thinking about visualizing your trip, every part of the trip, where is there the potential to generate single-use waste? And do you want to avoid it? And figuring out, there is planning, as you can see, but figuring out what little things you can do that aren't going to totally stress you out. And for me, it's those things I outlined.
That's great. Yeah, it's true. The refuse is a strong one. And you're right, it is countercultural. Someone hands you something free, you're like, why say no? And
Yeah.
because you're going to it turns into waste for 500 years because you had like 4 ounces of a club soda.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The other thing on trips is water bottles. Hotels are falling over themselves to give you a bottle of water every time you seem to leave the premises. And just saying no, 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 always refusing the water bottle. It's a big one.
great. Okay. Let's skip to packaging and specifically takeout containers. This is like a just salad question, but it's but also just more broadly. How do you like the bringing your own utensils? I find is really, really helpful. It's a nice, easy way, and also it's nicer to use good utensils rather than plastic garbage. But yeah, what else do you have on packaging?
Okay, so food packaging, we can break down into grocery and ordering takeout. So starting with takeout, it's really difficult if you don't have a place like a Just Salad or a Deliver Zero. But if you are in the New York City area, or even if you're not, there are services like Deliver Zero in New York. You can order through Deliver Zero, and they will bring your food in a reusable container. You can then bring it back or hand it back to the delivery person on your next order. If those things are appealing to you, and you're not in New York City, I think it's worth reaching out and asking them to come to your market. They need to know if there's demand. So with takeout, I do try to stick with those options, and that does limit me. So with grocery shopping, I have shopped the bulk bin a lot. We'll do that. There was a time when I brought a mason jar to the meat counter. I wanted to buy some chicken breast for my husband, and I said, "Can you put my chicken breast in my mason jar?" You get some funny looks, but then when they realize why, I got some thumbs up, So you want to start as extreme or as simple as you want. It's up to you. What else on food can I answer?
Well, there's the packaging, then there's also the food waste. There's eating out, delivery, and then food waste. Food waste is huge, right?
Yes. So the most important thing I do every day is compost. So food waste is about 22% of a US municipal waste stream. When you begin to compost, other people share this sentiment with me. You are amazed by how much lighter your trash is, and how much cleaner. It's no longer gross. And so composting, the way you do it will depend a lot on where you live. In New York City, we freeze our food scraps. So the zero waste community in New York City is very accustomed to putting your food scraps in a bag or a container in your freezer. And when you're ready to take it out, you go to a local composting site and drop it off. So that is the number one thing you can do to lighten your landfill waste, given the predominance of food in the waste stream. If you live outside of a metropolitan area or New York City, and you're blessed to have a backyard, I have used a double barrel composter that you can buy at Home Depot or wherever. And those work beautifully. But composting is extremely rewarding. Food is a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions when it decomposes in landfills, and it's consistently the number one thing I recommend to go zero waste. As unglamorous as it may sound, that is it. Composting. If we became a nation of composters, we would really go a long way towards solving a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think you said, what is it, 22% of the municipal solid waste stream is food, just throwing away food. It's crazy. A quarter of New York City's waste is food.
Now, you want to prevent food waste from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
So one thing I do is tell myself I'm going to eat everything in my fridge. And you just commit to eating those olives and those, that quinoa or whatever that could sit there forever, rather than ordering more food. So you do want to prevent food waste upstream as much as possible too.
And what about, like, let's just talk a little bit more about composting in the city. So we had a question about composting in a condo. So how did you find a local composting site? And have you heard of advocating within the condo, to set up a program? Is there
Yeah.
any municipal composting in New York right now?
Yes, so municipal composting in New York is being restored in limited areas. I do not fall within one of those areas, but if you are in certain areas of New York, you have access to the brown bin program that was suspended during the COVID pandemic. So it's worth a search, a Google search or whatever, to see if you're in the area, or Department of Sanitation should have that on their website. So the hope is we're going to have a mayoral election soon, and the hope is that whatever candidate becomes mayor of New York will push for brown bin composting, municipal composting all over New York City. But we're a ways away from that. So if you don't have that, the way to find, I go to a local farmer's market and drop it off there. And I have a link to a map of drop-off sites in the city. If anyone's interested, I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to share back a lot of resources after this. So, and at the end of this, we're going to ask you for your resources also, attendees. So please send them in, and then the follow-up email you get from this webinar is going to have a bunch of hopefully really helpful links. There's another question about composting without having to go outside every time you have waste. And I have a little compost bin, that sits by my sink, and that, take that out maybe once a day or every other day, depending on, what you're doing at home. And then also I see a comment here just about reducing animal products because of the carbon emissions, and definitely a plant-based diet. And then even more specifically, soy is another problem. And so minimizing red meat, poultry, pork, like all of the meat products. I think you can kind of estimate the bigger the animal, the bigger the carbon footprint of a pound of that meat. And so definitely reducing meat or eliminating meat and animal products is a way to minimize your footprint.
100%. I went vegan during the COVID pandemic. And when I mentioned the chicken example, I shop for a carnivorous husband. But yeah, we're talking about physical packaging waste, but in going zero waste, we're also talking about lowering your carbon footprint. So whoever mentioned meat is absolutely right. That's another big thing you can do. And if it's between purchasing vegetables packaged in plastic and purchasing a piece of meat, you're still going to do better with the vegetables on a carbon footprint basis.
Awesome. Before we move on from food, there's a few other things that you had mentioned before about community fridges.
Yes. So another way to keep food out of the landfill is, and the compost bin, is to donate it. So in Manhattan and the boroughs, the outer boroughs, there is a growing community fridge movement. And there's a map of community fridges where you can drop off food that you want to donate. And food insecure families use these. So that's another, that's something we do at Just Salad, actually. We donate excess food to community fridges.
That's wonderful. And then one more thing I'll mention on the groceries that you had mentioned before is buying, I think maybe you said this already, but buying the full fruit instead of packaged fruit. That's a really easy one. And it's so tempting. It's so tempting, but just such a, think about how, so if you need to get an orange out of the peel and into a package and then throw away the package, probably can go around that.
Yeah, so we buy whole pineapples in my household. We don't buy cut up fruit. We buy the pineapple, cut up the pineapple. So that's a big one. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, let's see. So many questions, guys. I love it. Let's talk about recycling, because we've gotten a bunch of questions about that. Oh, cool. Good questions, folks. All right, recycling. First of all, what goes in the recycling?
Sure. So again, I live in New York City. The first thing you want to do is look at the signage provided by the city and only ever put in what they tell you on that signage. The problem with our recycling habits is that we're putting everything in. And as much as we wish it were recycled, it's not. And that's what Corey referred to earlier as wish cycling. So let's talk about what doesn't go in. In your plastics bin, nothing flexible, no flimsy, flexible, malleable plastics are going to get recycled. Everything from your plastic bags that you hopefully aren't getting too much anymore in New York City, but wherever you do get plastic bags, keep those out of the bin always. Those are the bane of the recycler's existence. Plastic bags, all they do is clog up recycling machinery.
I'm going to share this. Sure, you keep talking.
Okay, and I have toured our local recycling facilities, and they say they have to stop the machinery and yank out these plastic bags that are clogging the filters they use to sort materials. So the question is almost, what do I not recycle and put in the trash? As counterintuitive as that may sound in a zero waste webinar, keep that stuff in the landfill bin. Yeah, this is a picture that our local recycling facility sent me a couple years ago now. And this is what happens with the plastic bags. This is a piece of machinery they had to take out and just start unraveling the bags from.
I hope everyone I've ever lived with is listening, because no flexible plastics in the recycling. It's counterproductive. You're gumming up the works. Don't do it. Don't do it.
So it's really a question of what should I not be recycling? And then that really just leaves the rigid plastics, milk jugs, that kind of thing, if you still have used plastic milk jugs. Other things that should be kept out of the recycling, or that if you put in the recycling, they're not going to hurt the machinery, but they're not going to get recycled, are plastic utensils, lipstick tubes. Why do I mention these things? Because their size is so small that it makes them not recyclable. Those things fall through the literal cracks, or they have no value. They're just the type of plastic and the size of it and the color of it. All of that makes them worthless to the recycler. So at Just Salad, where I work, we talk a lot about using bioplastic utensils. They'll recyclable utensils, but when we talk to recycling experts, they tell us, it's really, you gotta reuse. If you really want to keep these things out of a landfill, you've got to go to reusable utensils.
Yeah, and actually on that point, compostable stuff can't get recycled, right?
Yeah, so here's the thing with certain compostable, so say you are eating a salad out of like a fiber disposable bowl. Technically, those fiber bowls are recyclable in some markets. If you put them in, they're going to get pulped with paper and they can get recycled. However, the reality is that any piece of paper or anything you put in the paper bin that is contaminated with food should probably stay out and should go in your landfill bin, because it's going to ruin the batch of paper that is pulped into new paper. So they want to have clean paper to recycle. So something can be technically recyclable, but contamination just completely derails that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had a great line when we spoke before about you can't recycle your way out of the problem.
No.
You just have to reduce it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, 9% of all plastic ever produced in the world has been recycled. It's a mind-boggling figure, and that comes out of academic estimates. 9%. Some types of plastic are higher at like 22%, but you're really topping out in the 20s for rates of recycling of plastic. So that's why we emphasize refusing, reducing, reusing.
Yeah, and just to respond to a few of the things that have gotten raised in the questions, we used to export all of our recycling, and it was probably 2 years ago now that China stopped taking our plastics, and we don't have the infrastructure to recycle them here. And folks are approaching this in different ways, and there's folks that are trying to invest in that infrastructure. But it's funny because at Domini we talk to companies about this a lot, about how are you improving the collection of your own waste, the waste of your packaging, especially for food companies. And they are always quick to point out there's something like 30,000 different recycling jurisdictions in the US. So there is just, every town and locality has their own approach, and it is totally inconsistent. And there's not like, okay, everyone agrees that number 5 not flexible plastics go into this bin and it can get recycled this way. Everyone's doing it a little differently. Yeah. That said, I think pressing companies to have more closed loop packaging, more recyclable packaging. Sometimes it's like the label on the package makes it not recyclable. Or a great example was those pasta boxes have that little piece of plastic, that little plastic window, so you can see the pasta in the box when you're shopping for it. That makes it not recyclable in the paper recycling. So get rid of that, and then you can put it in the paper recycling. So definitely advocate with the brands that you care about. Someone asked about their yogurt brand. And if you have any advice on how to do that well, definitely please add that. But also you can advocate in your town about better recycling practices, better communication. You can educate people around you about how to recycle right, so you're supporting the recycling process. And then do you do any of the closed loop or the take back programs? Like, are you familiar with those, and how do you assess those?
Yeah, so TerraCycle is a well-known company that provides specialty recycling solutions for hard to recycle items. So if you go to the TerraCycle website, what you'll see is they have partnerships with lots of different companies. Let's use dog food as an example. Dog food comes in these big plastic bags, essentially, that are flexible, multi-layer, hard to recycle. They will partner with that dog food company where you can print a prepaid shipping label and send back your empty dog food bags for specialty recycling by TerraCycle. So then think about every other aspect of your life. They have some company like cosmetics, shampoo, even snack bar wrappers. They have programs to take back that packaging. So back in the day, pre-COVID, I would eat a snack bar every day. And that packaging isn't recyclable. So I actually took like a big pouch of those wrappers to a local sporting goods store that had a TerraCycle drop off for snack food or snack packaging. I did that right out of guilt. It was hard for me to avoid that piece of processed food, like my 4 o'clock snack craving. Sometimes that's what I reached for. I don't advocate that as a persistent practice. Like, I shouldn't be eating that food to begin with. I should be eating unpackaged, unprocessed food. But the point is that in your life, there are areas where it's going to be harder to go zero waste. TerraCycle can be something that you incorporate into the mix.
Definitely, definitely. And do you know any other companies that will do like private collection to?
Yeah, they're few and far between, but let's pivot to fashion for a minute.
Mm,
If you buy new clothing or if you're looking to buy clothing, there is a company I'm really excited about called 4 Days. 4 Days, and they allow you to send back your clothing and they recycle it. So I think those are becoming more common. Loop is another well-known circular e-commerce brand. You get your groceries, cleaning products in reusable containers, you send them back, they refill them. It's expensive. So that's a barrier. And then shampoo. The shampoo I'm currently using, and I'm struggling with the zero waste shampoo stuff, everybody, but Plain Products allows you, they send your shampoo in an aluminum container. When you're finished, you send it back, they refill and send you a new one. So yeah, these things are popping up. Those are the ones that come to mind immediately.
awesome. Yeah. And I'll say on the shampoo thing, I've switched to bars. I use bars for as much as I can, like body wash, everything. It's like you realize that was this year. My New Year's resolution was to address plastic in my bathroom. It's just like
Amazing.
everything comes. I haven't figured out lotion, but
Oh, I can help you there.
okay,
No.
let's hear it. Let's hear
Again,
it.
these are all very personal recommendations.
Mhm.
Depends on you. Bars are really tough for me. They just haven't worked. I probably just haven't found the right brand. But with lotion, I don't buy lotion. I just use coconut oil from my pantry, for large area surface areas, that kind of thing. So using your pantry is great. Baking soda for toothpaste.
Awesome.
You can do.
So cool. All right. I feel like we could keep talking about recycling all day, but there are some of these other domains that I want to make sure we get to. But we will come back to some of the recycling questions in the Q&A. Let's talk about the clothing some more. What do you do when you're cleaning out your closet to get rid of stuff? What's the best way? And actually, getting rid of all the stuff in your house.
Yeah.
What's your solution to that?
I am very passionate about zero waste in the clothing and apparel area, because I forget the exact statistic, but the amount of clothing that is landfilled in this country is shocking. And I do a couple things. So I will take anything I'm trying to get rid of to Goodwill. That's one stop on my list. If I can't do that for whatever reason, maybe they don't want it, there are clothing recycling bins in New York City at the farmers markets. So you can look up your local farmers market and see if they have clothing donation bins. However, a word of caution on clothing donation, it is not a silver bullet. Some of that clothing is going to end up in landfill. There's a glut of of donated clothing in the international market. So again, I wouldn't become a fast fashion advocate and just excuse it by saying, oh, I donate everything. That's really not going to work. The other thing is some zero wasters I know will cut up old t-shirts and use them as cloths for cleaning or in the kitchen. There's Craigslist, Poshmark, ThreadUp. These are websites or apps where you can sell your clothing, and I've had some success with that as well. But with clothing, the bottom line with me is everything I have on today is thrifted. This top is from Goodwill. The earrings are from a secondhand website. I've had the pants I'm wearing for 17 years, so they're not thrifted, but I was laughing about this with a friend the other day. I've had these pants for 17 years. I can't believe I still fit in them. But yeah, with fashion, I think those are my top guidelines.
I've solved this problem by stealing all my clothes from my sisters, but I don't think they love that. I did just read about another thing. And I mean, I think there's a ton of groups on social media that facilitate trading. certainly with like kids supplies, it's like, I've had so much stuff just given to me because, you're connected through social media and people are like, my kids outgrew it. I just need to hand it
Yes,
off. There was
absolutely.
something called the Buy Nothing Project I read about this weekend where, it connects local folks to share whatever it is. It could be extra food, it could be old clothes, but
Yeah.
same idea. And then Food Rescue US was in the same article as another way to just kind of reduce your footprint. Um, um, great. And then, okay, actually, so I think maybe one of the most breakthrough moments I had when we were talking about this earlier was holidays, parties. When you talk about domains to address, I am such a sucker for, no, we're going to make it really fun. I'm going to get extra lights. I'm going to get party favors. And it's like, you can generate so much trash throwing a party. So talk about holidays.
Sure. So um, with with the winter holidays, so my family will celebrate Christmas. Um, I do a few things. One, I try to give zero waste gifts. I have nieces and nephews, and that is very tough. So starting with kids, that's where I fail most often. But what I did this year, for my niece, for example, I bought her some really cute stuff on The Real Real, which is a secondhand site. Um, and then with my other two nieces and nephews, I did not go zero waste, but I did something that made me feel okay, which was I donated to World Wildlife Fund in their name.
Mm-hmm.
So they adopted an animal and they received a plush toy in the shape of that animal. That is not zero waste, but I have to give them something. I want to give them something, and I felt that it was going towards a good cause, and the plush toy apparently was made sustainably. So I'm not zero waste. I'm on a journey just like everyone else. With adults, it's easier. You can give preserves or gifts that are edible, bath salts in glass, glass container, bath salts go in the tub. So I just try to get creative and find beautiful things that will generate no permanent waste.
Mm-hmm.
And then with wrapping paper, some people will call me a Scrooge here, but I use newspaper. I save wrapping paper that comes into my house and I will repurpose it, but I will not buy wrapping paper or ribbon for any reason.
I think like a brown paper bag or a newspaper wrapping can look very nice.
Yes.
That's maybe my sustainability sensibility is coming in there, but I think that can be very classy. Just, maybe it's just because I get so upset by the waste otherwise. Okay, so we talked about holidays. We talked about your closet. How about home goods, cleaning and home goods? That's a big one.
Yeah. So cleaning is an area that's, I think, pretty easy to zero waste. Cleaning products, lots of plastic there. Some it's probably recyclable. I don't know. It depends on the brand. But with cleaning products, you can make your own. There are great recipes out there for, simple stuff. Vinegar is before we had these modern day brands, our great grandmothers or our grandmothers were using vinegar. At least a lot of them were. So vinegar is a key cleaning agent. So you can make your own with recipes, really simple. I've even tried to make my own soap. Didn't turn out so well, but I always go for bar soap, not packaged soap. And there are, again, some refill brands. So New York City, if you live near Brooklyn, for example, I really want to try Algramo, Algramo. It's a refill station for cleaning products. They started in Chile, the country of Chile, and they have established one refill station, Lower Manhattan, that I'm really dying to try. There are some health food stores that might refill your soaps in bulk for you. So it's either you're going to make it, you're going to refill it. or you're going to find a brand that will do the circular solution for you. And I've done a combination of all of those.
That's great. And then home goods. This was something, recently that I discovered. I think it's really limited to the Northeast, but secondhand furniture, but through a website where they do really good like cleaning and restoration. And some of it is like clearly used, but some of it looks brand new. And that I think it's called Kyo.com. And that was like, and they deliver it. And it's like basically like ordering it from a regular retailer, except that it's secondhand.
Not my entire living room, but very close to it is furnished by Kyo. Great secondhand. So rugs are made of polypropylene, which is amazing to me. They look like fabric, but a lot of rugs are made of polypropylene. You can buy an organic cotton rug, but again, like why not buy it secondhand if it looks great? So yeah, I agree with you, Corey. Kyo is really worth looking at for furniture, and furniture is so hard to recycle. So if you really want to make an impact, and you don't, you want to not buy furniture, go to Kyo. And I have no affiliation with Kyo.
Yeah, I don't think they're an investable company. We're not advocating for any investments here, but definitely secondhand furniture is a great way to reduce footprint. And okay, what about like a microwave that stops working?
Yeah.
I mean, our whole culture is designed to it's cheaper to buy a new one, so just throw it away. What do we do?
Yeah, e-waste is one of the fastest growing categories of waste. And it's a tragedy for not only the obvious reasons, but also because that e-waste contains valuable materials. In an iPhone alone, there are threads of gold that can be repurposed and used in another piece of electronics. Instead, we create these very dangerous mines that have horrible conditions and mine the earth for more and more precious metals or rare minerals. So e-waste is really something to keep in mind. I'm sorry for being so New York centric, but in New York, just starting where I live, there are e-waste drop-offs. And those should be listed on the Department of Sanitation site. I have to double check that, but I will look up or follow on Instagram. Those organizations so I can plan to drop anything off. With iPhones, I think Apple is finally collecting iPhones for recycling. I've also taken things to Best Buy. They have a recycling station in the entrance, but they've curtailed it. I don't think you can recycle everything anymore. If you have to dispose of something really big, Junk Luggers is a junk hauling company that tries to get everything to a donation or a recycler. So with e-waste, you have to do your research. It's a little harder, not as
But again, and this has come up a few places, and this is certainly something that we do as Domini as part of our kind of investment thesis, is like talk to the companies, talk to the brands, and say that you need better take back programs, you need more recyclable materials, whether it's your cosmetics or electronics or whatever. Express your preference to the brand. That makes a difference. Likewise, your local, your town, your city, your whatever jurisdiction you live in. I found that there's actually a recycling hotline in my county where you can just call. And look, I'll be honest, I still get inconsistent answers between my town and the county, and like, can you recycle pizza boxes? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And cartons, can they take cartons? Cartons go in the commingled, not in the paper. But like, there are resources, and the more you ask and the more you raise the issue, the more attention and visibility it's going to get.
Yeah. With and sometimes, Corey, too, the company doesn't advertise that they have a take back program very well. But even for printer cartridges, you can send them back. So really just checking the website of a brand could reveal something helpful.
Awesome. Okay, so I just want to kind of sum up here and then dig into these audience questions more, make sure we haven't missed anything. But so we've got the domains, we've got travel, food and diet, packaging, including groceries, personal care, cosmetics, home goods and cleaning, your closet, and holidays and parties. Those are, I think, some great categories. And like Sandra said at the beginning, like pick one thing to focus on. Don't try to, do everything all at the same time. It's too overwhelming, but get some habits in place. And, there's some stuff, COVID was disruptive, but I feel like there are some habits that I've just formed over time that now they're second nature. And so the bringing utensils around with me, I don't remember every time anymore, but that's, the one I'm trying to build in now. And then shopping for bathroom, like cosmetic stuff and personal care goods. That's my new thing that I'm focused on. We talked about become an advocate, right? Like talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, and talk to your town, talk to the brands, to scale up your impact. All right. So I think that's the strategy. Start with something you can tackle and scale it up over time across different categories and, in terms of your reach. Now let's see what we've got in the questions here. Does meat go in the trash or compost?
Yeah, you got to check with your local composter. Some local composters will not accept meat because it takes longer to decompose, and they have a set schedule for their compost piles. So it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, I think mostly I've seen that you can't put it in, and then I just find some adventurous homeowners that, put it in their yard and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Learn a lot about the local wildlife when you do that. Let's see. Any tips on supporting minority and diverse businesses with zero waste shopping? If those appear to be at odds.
Yeah, I don't have any specific tips because I really try not to shop this lifestyle. I just really try to use what I can find secondhand and what I have. There is an Instagram account I follow called Intersectional Environmentalist, and they are very focused on supporting minority businesses and minority voices. So I would recommend that account highly. And yeah, good luck. That's a great question.
Yeah. And also, like most places, if I show up with my own, and this is another great one that I like to do, but I don't always remember, is bring my own takeout, my own to-go containers. Because if I have leftover food, I hate to waste it, but then, you end up with more to-go food. To-go containers. But so bring my own takeout containers. But like, if you show up with your own reusable bags, takeout, all of that, go shop where you want. I mean, you're not really going to find an obstacle to using them, I don't think. Let's see what else. How do you distinguish what products are greenwashing versus actually sustainable?
Well, I know a fair amount about packaging from my job, and so I look at product packaging and their claim. So you know what? Before I go down that road, here's a good one. If a product says biodegradable, it doesn't mean much. As someone put it long ago, a car is biodegradable in a certain amount of time. Everything probably will biodegrade in 1,000 million years, whatever, right? That's not the point. The point is, so look for that. That's greenwashing. And it implies that the brand doesn't understand the mechanics of composting. You're looking for certified compostable, commercially compostable. ATSM, BPI are acronyms referring to compost certification. So I would definitely recommend that with packaging. Biodegradable is a red flag.
I just realized I was sharing the first poll this whole time. I hope that was not interfering with what you guys were looking at. There's a few more questions, but we just have a few minutes left. I'm going to launch a final poll and just see if there's an area of your life where you're thinking you might make a zero waste commitment in the next 6 months. Just like what feels within reach to you all, what feels most important, and we will follow up maybe in like 6 months and do this again and see if folks kept their, lived up to their commitments. But no, actually, and when we close out, like I said, there's going to be a survey after this. And if you have resources to share, if you have ideas, if you have goals you want to set, we can be accountability buddies, check in on each other, make sure we're all doing our part. That's great. And so while folks are answering that, I'm going to look at some of these last questions. How do you resolve family disputes about recycling? I usually find myself going through the trash and the recycling, resorting things. It's, just gotta be a better way.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I just use my patience and try to explain what the stakes are. And that picture that Corey showed, if you can just paint a picture for them, what you're doing is that your tax dollars are paying for recycling. Okay, so do you want your tax dollars to do something productive, or do you want them to be spent damaging recycling infrastructure? It's your money.
Oh, someone just sent in a bunch of women and minority-owned businesses in New York about Pre-Cycle, Ecosphere, Eco-Bronx. Cool, we will share that when we share stuff out at the end of this. Interesting, cleaning's getting a lot of votes, and food and diet. That's
Great.
wonderful. Yeah. Thank you everyone for your participation. And yeah, I think there's so much to cover here, but it's a place we can all do something, right? We can all do something better. We can all do something new. And there's just such a, Domini is all about making sure your money is doing the right thing. And, you have to grow your savings for your retirement or whatever. Just make sure in the meantime that, the person managing your money is advocating for these good policies. We can also all do it in our own lives. And so making sure we're all doing what we can and, moving the ball down the field and making those little kind of personal habit and cultural changes towards not taking the free giveaway every time someone offers you something, switching the soap you're buying to something that you make at home, or something that has, you're not paying to ship a huge amount of fluid around the country to use your cleaning product when you can easily use a dissolvable tablet or something like that. There's little things we can all do. And composting, I agree with you. Recycling, cut my trash in half, and then composting, cut it in half again. So, lots of things, but folks, please keep sharing your questions and your ideas. We're really glad you all joined, and it seems like folks enjoyed it. We will follow up with resources, and hopefully we'll do this again in not too long. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to close out now.
Thanks,
Have a good day. Thank you so much, Sandra.